talent out here tonight is quite extraordinary, and the prize gets no bigger, a spot in the big dance.
Sydney go on, McDonald kicks the goal as a result.
Papley, and the kick is going to work, and he wants a piece of Rioli. What an incredible season he's had, because he does things like that. As good as it gets. What a start this would be. Listen to this. Warner runs around and makes him pay. And it starts to reverberate around this famous ground. Here we are. They are through to the grand final and a shot at their sixth flag.
Just had unfinished business to attend to, and they will get their chance next week against the Sydney Swans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Footy Classified. What a grand final ahead, Sydney and Brisbane. It's going to be absolutely magnificent as we dive straight in. Football's First Lady, four-time Alf Brown Trophy winner and Walkley Award-winning Caroline Wilson. Good evening to you. The 300 gamer and just the one Alf Brown for Kane Coolins, but congratulations for last week. And the five-time five-time All-Australian and big-time finals performer Matthew Lloyd is here tonight. But we start with the coaches, ironically. There's a lot on the line. There's legacies on the line here, you feel. There's one of these coaches will be a 2 out of 3 losing grand finals. And the stakes are higher. Second for John Longmire, and an extraordinary story would be for Chris Fagan, who won the AFL Coaches Association Coach of the Year here tonight, Caro. But the stakes have never been higher for these two coaches going in.
They haven't. It's hard to know who it would be worse for the loser. Certainly everything for the winner. But I want to talk about Chris Fagan and his legacy. He's now, over the last 6 years, his win-loss record is better than any other coach in the AFL, and still he has his doubters, Craig, and you were one of them early on, and we had many arguments about Chris Fagan, but you're not the only one. Where do you think he stands now, Kane?
Well, I think he's done an amazing job, Cara, and I've probably been critical of him at times, like others have done. Let's have a listen to some of that.
Chris Fagan's done a great job of settling the troops, but he needs a tactician, quick sticks up there, because they don't have any semblance of tactical nous in that sense.
So unless he gets that, you don't believe he's the man to take them forward to being a finals team?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
So it does come down to tactics and coaching. But they got away with one last week. If Hogan kicks one more goal, I guarantee the back page of the paper is how do you let Hogan do this, all right? That's footy. That's our opinion outside looking in. He's got a different version of it, Chris, and we understand that. He can have that. But you deliver or you don't, and there are reasons.
Yeah, we've been a bit bemused, to be honest, a bit of the talk about what he's done. But since he got to the club, he's just been sensational. And to get us back from where we were, he just sort of went back to the basics. And
how many year extension will you give him?
It's up to the board, but probably as many as he wants.
So I feel like he wins now that this is Jared Berry after the game. We want to do it for him. I won't say what I want to say, but I don't think it's justified how they go after him. Berry told Fox Footy. I think he wins now. Like, my criticism has more been around selection and not having selection integrity and dropping the players that I feel like have let him down. But he's backed them in, Rayner and Hipwood and these players, and they've probably played their role. But as you said, 15 wins or more in the last 6 seasons, second grand final, lose last year by a kick. You can't be a great, all-time great if you don't win a premiership, Lordo, but I think it's certainly a pass mark and above expectation coaching career to this point.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, say if he doesn't win it and in a few years' time he's no longer the Brisbane coach or whatever it is, and you're not a premiership coach, there's always something missing. It's like that as a player, but even more so for a coach. Both these teams, now you look at it, look at the talent they've both got. So John Longmire doesn't win a second with this group. I think if we look on and say he was a good coach, John, he got his one. But what about the talent he finished his time with that lost
Matthew, the
2 years ago?
consistency over more than a decade with John Longmire.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Good
Chris
coach.
went to a club that was down on its knees. They had to guarantee their payments.
Damien Hardwick is a 3-time premiership coach. John Longmire, he's a 1-time premiership coach. He's well under Damien Hardwick.
So the stakes higher for Fagan, do you think?
Because he hasn't got one.
Yeah,
I think because he hasn't got one. But also
so does Ross Lyon sit in that category as well?
Well underneath, because he's got no good coach, but not a great, because he's got no premiership to show for it.
Were you hard on him?
No, I don't regret any of the observations. I think he's been probably one of the best managers of people coaching's produced.
And attractors of good players to the club too.
And he's all in on belief in his players, backing them in, he gives them... And history would say that's been able to get them deep in the finals. It hasn't yet got them a flag. So let's wait and see.
But I think
the tactical...
And the
edge is
turnaround
still...
win a season too.
Yep.
I mean, let's remember where they were at the start of the year.
And that was an unbelievable win on the weekend. He deserves every bit of credit he gets. John Longmire's got a decision to make with his captain, Callum Mills. We'll talk about that a little bit here. This is what he had to say today at Sydney training.
Oh, you always learn, and I guess one of those things is to make sure you train 100%, get through training and train flat out, and that's one of the things you learn. But that's one of the stories, I guess. In 2012 we played Teddy Richards, and he didn't really walk all week. He had a crook ankle, and we thought, how about playing you on Lance Franklin in the grand final? And he got through okay. So those are the stories that don't get talked about.
Yeah, but I don't agree with that. An ankle's different, and where you roll your ankle a little bit to this.
And I just thought a little bit about him as a coach and a confidant. So in 1999, he tore a hamstring and an elbow tendon. He limped around in the reserves in the last round. He thought it might be finished. And then North wasn't a wealthy club, but they gave him a go in his own grand final, Lordo. But I guess in part because of the calibre of person that he was and his contribution. Anthony Stevens at North Melbourne happened as well. Like, what part of the human side of John is tempted to play Callum even a little bit underdone?
Yeah,
and he's been in that position himself.
Yeah, you got to remove that human side, and you've just got to do what's right for your team. And I'll never forget John Longmire post-match 2 years ago, and he says, I made a massive mistake. I should not have played. That name at the top there, Sam Reid, in the 2022 grand final. I made a massive mistake. And these are the mistakes he made in 16 with Mills and Jared McVeigh also, and they lost that grand final. So for every Nigel Lappin, in my opinion, that gets through, Stevie J, there's more that, do you know what, I should have picked the fit player. And that's how I feel in this.
Yeah, and he hasn't been in great form, Callum Mills. There's 7 games for the year, and clearly I think he's really only got himself to blame. Here's the vision of when he tore that rotator cuff, being a clown on Mad Monday. Now, I think it's a real lesson for other players. Football is every day of the year. You've got to prepare yourself so that you're in the best physical position you can be at this time. Now, of course, there's a hard luck story like Oscar McInerney, injuries you can't avoid. That was entirely avoidable. And for the captain to put himself in that position, I was critical at the time. And yes, you've got empathy for him and the heartbreaking story of missing. But in the end, his body was never able to cope with this season because of the position he put himself on.
I hope he plays. I think he's been such a great servant in that club, and I hope he gets a nod.
So you're connecting a stupid thing he did, which the club handled brilliantly, really, and look where they've ended up, to the injury he suffered.
You miss pre-season, all of pre-season. You come back in, you tear your calf in April. You play the last 7 games of the year, the first one back, then he had to be managed because he was sore. He's had no continuity with his body because he missed so much football with soft tissue history because of that stupid incident on Mad Monday. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for him.
McInerney's a big out, and they've got, it looks like Fort's going to get the gig here, Lord. Lord, what do you think about this?
You can't expect Danaher just to come in and be the number 1 ruckman. It takes too much away from the forward line. So it's a massive loss, though, because I think Grundy should be licking his lips. I remember as a full forward, and if I saw a young fullback who'd played 2 games or 4 games, I'd go, come on, let's
start licking your lips.
I'd lick the lips, and it's time to fill your boots. And if I'm Brodie Grundy, you're going in with that attitude of saying, I'm the man today. I should be the man. I don't care if it's Fort or it's Smith or it's Danaher. I should be the best man on the ground here and give my team the best chance.
So the story of what happened to Brisbane last year, Craig and Matthew and Kane, when the charter flight they booked, there was weather issues in Brisbane. They didn't get to Melbourne until late on Thursday night. We know Chris Fagan put a document to the AFL Commission about the unfairness on travelling teams coming to the MCG on grand final day, mitigated somewhat by the fact they're playing another non-Victorian team. Here's the football boss, Danny Daly, on all of that today.
We had no idea the amount of logistical information and things you've got to set up as an interstate club. So we probably Didn't hit the ground running in terms of preliminary final week. It was a mad rush and we probably weren't as prepared as what we'd like to be. So basically once we knew we're in the preliminary final last week, we started work on all the logistical information we needed to do this week. We probably had a week more work done in advance from last year.
It's more serious, and well, this is what they're doing. The AFL are actually giving, as a result of some of the problems, an extra $50,000 to non-travelling clubs. But I'm told the stress on senior staffers at Brisbane last year, including one long-time beloved football manager, they think might have cost her life in the end. She got very, very, very ill, or maybe prolonged, or quickened her demise. So Brisbane were angry, very angry about this. It's really interesting, I reckon. They're coming to Melbourne on Wednesday. Lee Matthews is filthy. He's filthy that neither club are getting a charter flight. He can't believe, with the money they spend on Katy Perry, they don't get a charter flight. He can't believe, and neither can the clubs, that they can't train on the MCG on Thursday. Brisbane are here because of Katy Perry rehearsing. It is interesting how much weight they put on the noise around the grand final and not helping the clubs.
I think the charter argument's a fair one. Let's bring us to our final spotlight, Kane, and you've got one player you want to take a look at.
Yeah, I'm looking at one of the lesser lights for Brisbane, but he's a good player, Payne. Of course, he's got the knee injury. He's got up to play in the last two finals, but he's been badly beaten. 5 goals against Hogan, and we're seeing this here. And Lordo, you showed this vision about just his body positioning and whether he's got eyes on the opponent or eyes on the ball. So he's had 5 kicked in 3 quarters on him in this game, clearly hampered still by the knee that he's strapped. And then against Geelong, I just thought once again, whilst he had some good moments and had some good moments late in a game-saving tackle, this is the vision once again from the qualifying final, of course. But when Ollie Henry took him to task with 4 goals again, Ollie Henry hasn't been a player that's been a big goal kicker this year. So I think this week, yes, it's going to be a Marty, McLean, McDonald, one of those 3 you would think. So lesser lights from Sydney are not their most important players. I think Brisbane have got an issue with this man, who I thought has, cost them at times throughout the final series. We're seeing it here, the vision rolling with Henry just getting in behind. The same problem that you highlighted last week. Just, is it ball, is it opponent, bang, another goal, and Henry kicks 4. So that's a player that Sydney could exploit. One
of the intriguing matchups last year's grand final was Frampton going to Harris Andrews, and I think it's a smaller matchup, so I'd send Luke Parker to him. So this is Aliir in the first quarter, and I thought he was brilliant for Port Adelaide against the Talls, Logan McDonald, Marty McLean. He was too good for him, he was too smart, but then they put Luke Parker to him after quarter time, and he timed his leads beautifully. He hit up on Aliir. So I just wonder if this could be a role John Longmire could set for Harris Andrews on Saturday.
I like it. Pick up, yeah, and he spoke today about Luke Parker, just the fact that he plays the role that he's asked to, and just a final one, the scars that were there for 2022 for some of these Sydney players, and they're the best players that didn't rock up. One of them was Isaac Heaney, but he's just that's his numbers in 2022, Hutchie. He's just a far superior player to that. He looks like he owns the ground at the moment. So if I was picking a player first out of these 2 teams in the grand final, I'd pick Isaac Heaney, and I don't suspect he's going to have a performance like he did in 2022 again.
And Dunkley's
yeah, I think Dunkley, probably Dunkley. But then I think Heaney can expose him when he goes forward. I'm not sure Dunkley has the defensive craft to take him when he's forward.
We've all spoken about Marty, McLean and also McDonald a lot this year, but I think there's 2 young men, or relatively young, certainly in Morris and also Hipwood. So I know Hipwood gets spoken about a lot, but he averages 10 touches a game and 1 goal. And then Logan Morris averages 8 disposals and 1 goal a game. So I think for all the pressure we put on Marty, McLean and McDonald, who Marty's kicked 40-plus goals, I think a lot's going to fall on these guys where they can contribute on grand final day.
Yep, it'll be fascinating to see what he brings Hipwood on the weekend, and it is the occasion for him. We moved to the Brownlow last night, a lot of fallout. First of all, congratulations to Patrick Cripps. It was a stunning win. 45 votes, an all-time record, dominated, 20% higher, I think, than 25% than anyone ever before them. You just do wonder some of the fallout to the voting last night, Caro, is going to increase pressure on the system as we look at Patrick Cripps with a win. 45 votes. Some of the calls through the night were a little interesting in some of the rounds. In fact, a match against the coaches of votes today told a fairly damning story about 17 games, I think, where 3 votes didn't get the result.
Well, I mean, the Dacos ones were completely bemusing. I mean, there was clearly one game when they meant to give a vote to Nick Dacos and they gave it to Josh Dacos. And you could see the Dacos, I was not seated far of them. They were killing themselves laughing. I don't know. I just, you've got a full forward who's come from nowhere to GWS, won a Coleman medal and almost got them into a preliminary final. And why don't they get votes?
It's bizarre. Jacob Wiedering, no votes.
Should the umpires look at stats? I mean, this is a big argument.
They're pushing.
They have to, Caro. We are living in a data-led world, and we're restricting the poor umpires from getting the most amount of information they can to make the best choice they can.
As a player, I had no idea who played well, really, largely after the end of the game. So the umpires, everything they need to do, and this debate happens every year, but I just
Nick
don't
Revolt never came close. You never came close, did you?
Defenders don't pile there.
Buddy kicked, I think there was one season where I think Buddy and Favola were going for their 100th one year, but he kicked 110, 120, and he didn't get near it either.
For Nick to get 38 votes, a record amount, and not win it is extraordinary.
Well, it's been heartbreak for him 2 years in a row, really, hasn't it?
And just on the Blues, they've had Coleman medalists every year. Patrick Cripps, he can't do any more, but this is how unhealthy he's become. Like, this is not a knock on him, but it's a knock on everyone else around him to lift. It's why you go from a prelim to just scraping in the finals and straight out. This is a side Carlton beat last year, the Sydney Swans in a final. And look at the balance of the Sydney Swans top three versus the top three at Carlton, and that's the reason. And Scotty Pendlebury on 3AW before the county said, I say to Nick Dacos, don't worry about Brownlows. He said it's all about the team and what we can do and an even contribution, and that's what Carlton don't have, unfortunately, around Patrick Cripps.
There was a lot to come from last night. Angus Brayshaw was another. He spoke beautifully, but it was equally as sad at the same time to see him in the retiree speech. Here's a little of what he had to say.
But I'm not going to lie, the absence of football has left a very deep void. Days that were planned to the minute and filled with purpose need to be replaced, and in time they will be. Football is all-consuming. No matter how long your career was, how successful it was, or even how well you've prepared for the next stage, the transition is difficult.
So Angus Brayshaw is, I'm told, 4 to 6 weeks away from coming to terms financially with his settlement from the game and the various elements, including his own footy club, where he had 4 years left on his contract. It's been really complicated, but it should be done. But he, I understand, is a long way more than 4 to 6 weeks with coming to terms with the heartbreak of leaving football the way he did. And you're right, Craig, it was heartbreaking to watch, but it was brilliant to watch. It was, you know, a great idea by the Brownlow to get him to come in. I'm told he came in and he left. He didn't go anywhere near socialising, I'm told, and with his teammates. And I want to talk a bit later in the show about what's going on at Melbourne and the impact that the absence of Angus Brayshaw has left.
No doubt, and the Christian Petrarca piece is a part of that, which we'll deal with a little later on the show. Plenty more to come on Footy Classified, including Ken and the Power, as the fallout continues for the preliminary final loss. Time wasters. Did the Cats botch the handling of an injured star, or what actually happened with Max Holmes? And don't call us, we'll call you. The Suns' dusty dilemma, well, it drags on. That's all ahead on Footy Class.
How do you spend the next few weeks after the exit interviews, etc.? You're going to have a holiday?
Yeah, definitely, and a much-needed one, I would say, more so than any other time, to be honest. I look forward to that with the family, and we'll get away and have some time together and refresh, recharge, and be ready to have another go.
Ken Hinkley, lots of talk in the postseason already. Caro, where does it go from here, the Port Adelaide coaching situation?
Well, Ken Hinkley's contracted for next year. The plan is at the moment that Ken Hinkley will take a slightly longer break than normal, which is his call because he needs one. It's been a tough year for him. It should be pointed out, though, they finished third, Port Adelaide, with a list that I don't believe is anywhere near the third best in the AFL. So in many ways, he's done a brilliant job, but it ended sort of in a tough way for him, the loss at the SCG. I think he feels, there's a feeling that he might worry that what happened with the Hawks might end up being part of his legacy, which I don't think will happen, but look, he's got a year to go. There's an unofficial agreement for Josh Carr to take over from him at some point. The club is invested in that. Ken is invested in that. I just wonder if even now Ken is wondering what's going to happen next year. He knows what's going to happen next year. He knows he's not going to get a contract extension early in the year. So he knows it's going to be tough if they don't start winning. And there is a view that maybe he might even make the call. I'm not sure if he'd necessarily, maybe walk away, maybe say that this is my last year and Josh is going to take over the following year, or maybe declare at the start of the year, I know what I'm facing, I'm going to tough it out. But
that's sort of been his mantra right the way through for the last 4 or 5 years.
I'm going to tough it out.
So I just
There's
wonder
a view that maybe that just can't keep happening.
Yeah, so he needs to have a really honest chat with the footy club and get his family involved if they're concerned about him as well, because the toll that it's taken on him, I don't think it's healthy, and I wonder whether the best thing for him would to be have.
You think he should call it?
Well, who am I to say? Like, because he's
well, you're a 300 game or 4-time Mr. First.
Just
you're the absolute right person.
Yeah, observing how unhealthy the situation has been at the football club, with the volcanic nature of the fans, with I think he's up against it to get this team in a position with the list that they've got into a similar spot. So it's going
to continue to rebuild on the run.
It's going to be brutal for him next year. So is the best thing for him to shake hands with the footy club and say, this has been unbelievable, 12 years, you've been enormous. Give him the cheque that he clearly deserves. Give him a year off, and then there'll be 4 or 5 clubs that would love to get Ken Hinkley to their footy club, and that's the discussion they've got.
Just on that, I agree. I think no coaches walk away from their jobs, do they? It's happened once or twice over time. But if he was to take the year off, he could be coaching for another 5 years. I think if he takes one more year at Port Adelaide, that could be the last year he ever coached in his career. So that's the decision he and his management family need to make.
The Hawthorn fallout continues. Let's revisit what James Sicily had to say, and then we'll hear from Sam Mitchell at the Brownlow.
I mean, it's not the first time that Ken's done that, won't be the last, but it's an emotional game and sometimes it gets the better of us.
Ken Hinkley, good bloke.
I don't know him at all, actually. I've never met him other than the other night.
And you don't know what you don't know as well.
You don't know what you don't know.
So they're really upset, Hawthorn, behind the scenes of what they think started in round 10 when Port Adelaide came from behind to win. And they thought there was a celebration directed from Ken into the face of the Hawthorn dugout after the final siren. So we got the vision of exactly.
Have you got a conspiracy theory?
Well, this is the vision of what I think they're talking about. So you'll see Ken here after the Burn-Jones.
Which one's Ken?
Kick.
That's real Ken there?
That's real Ken there.
What do you mean real Ken?
You'll see a fake Ken because there's a lookalike there. That's fake Ken there. So this is after the game. So that's clearly saying 1 second to the fans. This is him celebrating.
Look, there's 2 Kens.
Not in the direction of Hawthorn, but there's fake Ken. So I think
who's fake Ken?
Well, Paul Rosonico is his name. There's fake Ken.
You think that the wrong person got accused?
I think there's a case of mistaken identity, and Hawthorn.
This is an unbelievable stretch.
No, honestly,
they blame the wrong Ken. You think?
Well, you've seen the vision for yourself. You make up your own mind. They are dead ringers of each other. Paul Rosonico, fake Ken, real
I've heard
Ken.
it all.
Real
You're blaming
Ken was
celebrating around in 2014 when at the preliminary final when Paul almost got over the line.
Stalwart. Paul, he's such an important person, but there's a case of mistaken identity. I think Hawthorn are upset at fake Ken, not real Ken.
Could it have been fake Ken who did the aeroplane wing?
No. Just on that though, like if we're taking you at what you're saying there, Hawthorn, if whatever, either one of them.
Very sensitive, aren't they?
Yeah, you can't. If that is true, surely they're not serious.
Hawthorn, you mean?
Yeah.
That's been reported. That's true.
No, I've spoken to Hawthorn about that. Yeah, and they go back to 2014. They said Ken was goading the bench at 2014 during at some point late in the game too.
And there's change. There's players out. Houston was made it public. We'll talk about that later. That Dixon's going. Boak's got his own decision. And then it comes to Lukosius coming in. So you like that or you're not sure?
I like him as a player. Yes, he's got to get far better. He's an unbelievable talent. But I just look at this forward line and I go, OK, just say it's Marshall, Georgiades and Lukosius. Are those 3 going to be there on grand final day? And you might say, well, look at the Sydney Swans, but they don't have the class around them. So I would have liked them to see if there's a big-bodied type forward to complement, because Georgiades looks a really good player. But you've got Marshall and Lukosius around.
They're hard to get, though, aren't they, those big forwards?
Yeah, they are.
Melbourne have been trying to get one. Collingwood's trying to get one.
The reports are that Lukosius is on 1.9 in a back-ended deal. So they're going to spread it out over a long time.
Which goes to show how ridiculous Gold Coast list management has been, if that's the case. But they're just going to say, well, if a talented player wants to come home, we'll take him because he's better than what we've had in the forward line in the finals.
I think there'll be an inquest at Geelong into the 20 minutes that the game swung in the third quarter when Max Holmes went to the bench, and the delay to make this decision. And Lordo, you picked this up and read it first yesterday on the Sunday Footy Show. There was indecision on to sub him or not. They felt like they were in limbo for 20 minutes. This is when all the damage got done and the game swung, and the decision was eventually made. What's your view on this?
Yeah, well, Damo and I debated on Sunday. Damo's saying this was genuinely a decision around what he went through 2 years ago, which may be right. And I'm saying I couldn't care less what happened 2 years ago. You've got a final to win. Get him off. and get Mitch Duncan into the game. They played for 15, 20 minutes, one short because of that. And he was doing run-throughs, putting his hands up. You could see he knew he was gone. Yeah. So they had to make that call quicker, and they lost all their run, and it was game over in that time.
Hard to argue with that.
Yeah.
So what's your view on Bailey Smith watching the game with the Geelong camp? It didn't go down too well with the Western Bulldogs when this photo appeared on social media. There's Bailey Smith. There's obviously Tom Hawkins in the background. He's sitting with family members of Ash Hardwick, one of the co-owners of Cotton On. Cotton On, of course, being a major sponsor at Geelong. Bailey Smith, of course, is a Cotton On ambassador. There's no formal deal yet, we know, between Bailey Smith and Geelong, but it was unusual to me.
Yeah, it might be unusual, but his head, to me, has been with them for 12 months, to 18 months, however long. It doesn't surprise me because, it seems to me that he's known he's been leaving for a long time.
Geelong are lucky to have that Cotton On deal, aren't they? It's been good for them.
It was a really tough lead-up for the Cats, and Stephen King obviously had a very worrying incident at training on Friday. Thankfully, he's okay, and we're thrilled about that, and we're looking forward to seeing him make a full recovery. He's going to be an outstanding senior coach. But I did want to ask a question. The decision to allow him to fly to Perth, leaving aside what happened in the health, but just to be gone for a day, to fly across the country and back, were they...
I was surprised about that.
Hard-nosed enough, the Cats, to say, it's a premiership to be won here, and what do you think on this?
Well, in an ideal world, they needed to be hard-nosed with him and say, no.
It's classic Geelong, though, isn't it? Live and let live, and it sort of works for them.
But in hindsight, I reckon, and you weren't to know about the health situation and what a disruption that would have been, plus you're losing the intel from the coach's box, but trying to win a premiership, that needed to wait until Geelong were out of the finals before he addressed that last.
Your thoughts on this?
I know you brought it up this morning, Hutchie, and I couldn't agree with you more. If they really want you, you understand that they would fly to you and you can even wait. It's not as if West Coast have made a decision since. He could have been on the plane spending 3 or 4 days over there. Since. So I reckon, Geelong, in hindsight, have made the wrong call.
Now, it wouldn't be a fixture. It wouldn't be a last show of the year without some fixture news, I should say. Amazingly, the AFL is still considering giving West Coast and Fremantle an extra home game next year. It's going to go to the Commission in October. Simon Garlick, the Freo CEO, made a big presentation to this to all the clubs in the middle of the year. They want 2 clubs a year to go over there, 2 different clubs from Victoria every year. That's not going to happen. But the AFL has confirmed to me that one proposal is that they will look at a club who's prepared to go over to Perth, or 2 clubs, or a club that's prepared to go twice a year, selling home games to play both clubs each year, with the recognition that there is a major disadvantage because of the travel.
That's unbelievable.
It's fairer, though.
It's fairer.
It's not over the line, but it's not dead in the water.
Well, it comes at the expense of another team who gets 1 less home game.
Yeah, I understand.
Someone has to go there.
A lot of those Victorian clubs play a lot of football in Victoria, so for them to have to go to Perth an extra time and have, 13 games at the MCG, more so than 14, I think that's a fair assessment.
And one of this year's grand finalists will open the season next year on March 6 on the Thursday night. An opening round won't change, Craig, in its format. It will be 4 games, no games outside of Sydney, Queensland, Gold Coast or Brisbane. It's going to be a big 4 days.
I think it'll be a Sydney-Brisbane rematch, which will be a good way to start the season. Caro's Arrow is up next on Footy Classified. The Dusty saga drags on. Where will it end when the music stops? And Melbourne's issues, well, they're far from behind them, and Caro takes us behind that story next on Footy Classified.
Alistair Nicholson runs the AFL Coaches Association. You remember them. They're the ones who went in loudly and passionately to bat for Ken Hinkley last week after the AFL fined him a ridiculous $20,000. Actually, no, they didn't. They're the ones who host a gala awards night on this night every year, handing out coaches awards in a big celebration of the industry. Actually, no, that event is now run online. And they're the ones who negotiated a big pay rise, long overdue post-COVID, for the coaches by relaxing the soft cap in a new deal with the AFL. Actually, no, it was John Longmire and other coaches who led that. My view, it's time to ditch the Coaches Association. They're a toothless tiger, funded by the AFL to the tune of almost $1 million. Even the AFL believe that money could be better spent. And so fearful are the Coaches Association of losing that funding that they never really go in to bat for their coaches, too worried about upsetting head office. Sounds like a waste of time and office space to me. and money.
Strong.
Good arrow.
Strong. The awards were online tonight, did you say?
They were run online during COVID, like many things were.
But there was a Zoom call.
I just said to someone, "Are you going to the coaches?"
And they weren't on. They were on the computer.
They said, "Oh no, they're run. They're run
Chris
online."
Fagan was coach of the year tonight.
And
well done to Chris.
I'm not mocking the coaches, but really, come on, guys.
They need to develop some other non-AFL funding if they're going to keep going, because they need to get some more independence.
Well, the coaches funded too, and the clubs put on money to the dinner, and I think the clubs arced up, and now it's online.
The Dustin Martin saga drags on. Willie Warney, Trent Cotchin, of course, we know what he had to say, and then Damien Hardwick. Well, there's still hope.
There is a 0 to 1% chance that he pulls on a Suns Guernsey, or any other Guernsey for that matter.
Well, we're certainly open to it. We've had conversations, and we're like, you know, from our point of view, he's a really, really good player, sort of thing. It's just whether it is working for both parties.
He's a good player who's lacked drive, and I was on 3AW last night, and I asked a question of Scott Pendlebury, and this was a player older than Dustin Martin, and this is how he spoke about the upcoming season for him.
I got away to Greece and I was really disappointed with the year that we had as a side, and after 6 or 7 days, runners are on, I'm in a track at Athens running and just like burning inside of like, why aren't we here? We are good enough to be here. And my aim is to come back in the best shape I've ever been in my 20 years. Everyone talks about squeezing the lemon. I know my lemon's fairly well squeezed, but I want to give it one more shot and give it the best I've got.
If I'm the Gold Coast Suns, that's the type of attitude person that I'm only taking.
It's a really bad comparison. Dustin Martin and Scott Pendlebury were never anything like each other. One is a leader, off-field and on-field.
100%.
One is just a brilliant player.
Yes. So you don't look at a player like Dustin and hope he's going to tell you, yeah, I'm coming. I'd love to see Dustin go up there and do a month of training, or say, yeah, because I don't think...
prove himself.
Oh, yeah.
He needs to a bit.
I think so, because why...
He completely needs to prove himself.
Why are they hoping that he's going to tell them, don't you? You know, you can't be a part-time footballer in this game, you get found out. So I just think they've got to give up on it.
And then Christian Petrarca is still heading off to the Red Bull event in the off-season. Max Gawn defended that in this interview.
I think anything that gets track back to the best version of Christian Petrarca, both on and off the field, is something he should delve into. And he pitched this is something that will put him into a great headspace. I remember him before he got injured, he was real down about how Red Bull organised the camp at the same time the BNF was. And then it's been able to get to a point where it seems like this is probably something that would suit him more than being in the BNF.
Yeah, I can't remember a time where a club has tiptoed around a player more than Melbourne have tiptoed around Christian Petrarca, afraid to upset him in any way this year. For Gawn to say that, how about you just have a hard conversation? Say, look, Christian, we need you to be at this best and fairest. You must be here, and make the call for him. They're absolutely petrified of Christian Petrarca, and it's not going to end well, Carol.
He was flat even before he got injured, that it coincided with the BNF. There's a lack of leadership right there. Max Gawn has been a great leader in so many ways, but that's not leadership. Speaking of leadership, look, I think the Melbourne board is still divided. No one's really sure about whether Brad Green's going to be a permanent president. Names like Russell Howcroft has come up as someone who might be approached, and I don't think Russell would do it. But you've also got the other problem with the Christian Petrarca situation that still hasn't been resolved, the wider industry problem. So my understanding, Matthew, is that the AFL and the AFL Players Association will in the next few days tick off a full-scale review, not to punish anyone, a review run by a medico outside of the competition to find out exactly what went on the King's birthday. So the injury and the incident still continues to haunt the game.
Close checking, good call, bad call. Closing Cook, a whole lot more ahead on Footy Class. Don't forget the Channel 9 My Room Grand Final Spectacular. This will be magnificent. Live from Palms at Crown on Thursday, this Grand Final week from 7:30, right here on 9. Guests include Patrick Cripps, Nick Dacos. Can you believe it? Harris Andrews will be there, Cody Wakeman, and also everyone's favourite, Billy Brownless, the King of Geelong. There's Cody, and you can telephone your friends and say, be watching or get there. It's going to be magnificent. The Grand Final My Room Spectacular. It's an amazing cause, this, on Thursday night. Best of luck to everyone involved. Caro, and I guess Matthew, Zach Merritt, that story just still simmers a little bit in the off-season. What does he need to do to prove himself, if anything?
Well, there's been a concerted effort to work on Zach Merritt's off-field leadership, Matthew. So he spoke to Pete Ryan in The Age the other day, and he spoke about potentially going overseas. He and Andy McGrath are going to go and pay a visit to the Denver Nuggets in the NBA, and they're going with their coach, Brad Scott. What is amazing to me is that I didn't realise that Adrian Dodoro in the past has been the mentor, really, for the captain and organising, meetings with him, with people all around the footy industry, from premiership coaches to premiership captains
to both of
other
you.
Captains. I just to probably you and to Kane. I just find that it feels like another incident of the tail wagging the dog at Essendon, and I think it's time that they clean themselves.
I'll just say, I'm sure Zach texts you direct, didn't he, Kane?
He has before, yeah.
Yeah, and he texts me direct, so it has nothing to do with Adrian in no situation.
Well, in other situations it has.
But he's the least of their problems. I think they, right across the board, need to improve. Zach can't do much more.
Do you think someone will take Jake Stringer?
Well, at the moment, I'd say he goes back to the Bombers. But it's very, very early.
I think Essendon are probably still hopeful that they get an offer.
Yeah.
It's time for close checking with Kane Corns.
Thank you, Hutchie. I just want to highlight how well organised and how disciplined Sydney are with their structure, defensive stoppage here, and look, just the way that their forwards set up the ground and how everyone plays their role. So they're high forwards, you can see them there. McDonald, Hayward, Heaney coming up basically to defend the ground, and you're going to see Cunningham on Rioli there. Now, these players, not all of them are going to get involved, but how important their structure is and how they all buy in and play their role. So kick will squirt out here. You get the forwards, the high forwards, Hayward, deep inside defensive 50, who compete. You get your deep forwards up there to provide a contest, and then you're going to see the switch, and you're going to see it switch play out. Now, Logan McDonald, who was up at centre half back, he's working his way through the middle of the ground. The switch comes. Cunningham was on Rioli, trying to stop him from kicking a goal, but the minute they won it, he's gone into offensive mode, and Logan McDonald, who was at centre-half forwards, the one that marks the ball inside forward 50, so well drilled. Geelong need a ruckman. I've said this a million times, that's a weak effort in a prelim final. He's got to mark that footy, Reece Stanley, and there's a couple of examples of that. He's got one arm, Oscar McInerney, and Reece Stanley's going to give you an effort like that. He's got to attack the footy. The very next stoppage, once again, he's got a dislocated shoulder, big Oscar McInerney. What's he going to do? He's going to smash it. So whilst he plays a good game every 8, Reece Stanley, they need a new ruckman and get one quickly. Just the line's getting sucked in here. So it just felt like at times they all got sucked in too close to the contest. Now, if this happens on Saturday, you watch Sydney get on the outside of these Brisbane midfielders who got sucked in. So that'll be Papley coming up as the high half forward. If you're all sucked in, look at them. They're all like bees to the honey pot. That's Papley out the back. Then you get a goal from a stoppage. Now, stoppage scores are going to be very important on Saturday. Yep, it's a bit of luck here. Falls in the hands of Jeremy Cameron. So it's fortunate. But if their midfielders get sucked in, Sydney will hold their width and they'll cut you up on the outside. Speaking of get cut up, Manor, well, he's a bit of a liability, Zorko. I know you spoke about him on Sunday, Lordo, but that is your back line, not your forward line. And Zorko just charges in looking for the handball receive, which he may get one every 10, but they're going to punish him. He could have 3 or 4 kicked on him if he's not defensively better. And Duncan, we've all seen this moment. So he's the sub, comes on with... We all saw that one, right? But what we didn't see was this one where he coughs up the footy in tight here. So that's fine, skill error. But the lack of chase with fresh legs with 2 minutes to go is alarming. So just watch Duncan in here. So cough up, skill error, and then he walks. Like, well, where is the intensity with fresh legs to go back and make up for your mistakes? So I reckon Geelong got their sub wrong.
Well done, Kane. Magnificent year for close checking. Absolutely sensational. Good call, bad call. He's up next on Footy Classified. Good call, bad call. Caro with the new ball. And Caro, what's this? A cheeky one from you. Amanda Dillon is the new Kelvin Templeton. Good call, bad call.
Cruel and ridiculous call.
Stupid
but
call.
before I explain why, let's have a listen to the CEO's wife before the Brownlow last night.
I would like to see Marcus Bontempelli, but I've been told he's maybe not in the mix. But, yeah, we'll see.
Look, it was 1978 when Kelvin Templeton was told he'd won. I think Amanda Dillon had just looked at the odds and seen the Bont was 15 to 1.
No way either of them had any idea. No way
lucky guess.
either of them had any idea.
It's never too early to go the early crow. Good call.
Look, this is a good call, lizard call. I like this from Nick Blakey. He thought, he identified the fact he was in front.
Sydney and Blakey, one vote.
I'm winning, says a lizard. And hopefully you might be winning on Saturday.
Kane, there's no area of the game that isn't steeped in Victorian bias. Good call, bad.
Great call from you, Lordo. How's the disrespect for Willem Drew, the Port Adelaide gun midfielder? Could not even get his name spelt correctly on the name card of the Brownlow medal. This guy's a star of the game. Get his name right. Disgraceful.
And Matthew, speaking of Victorian bias, even Australian sporting greats aren't immune. Good call, bad call.
It's another great call by you, Caro. Have a look at this. This is, the invite is at the Victor Trumpet Room. Stand, sorry, not the Victor Trumper stand. It was a great...
That was the invitation on Friday night.
Oh, fair go. Kane, the AFL should have just a hits clause for all grand final performers. Good call, bad call.
100%, Hutchie. And Katy Perry's she's got great hits everywhere. So this is we only want you bangers. That's the demand from the AFL towards Katy Perry. So give us some Teenage Dream, some raw Hutchie, the
nothing
one that got away.
Album.
Nothing off Broadway, nothing off the poorly reviewed new album.
100%.
Oh,
I agree.
It was poorly reviewed.
Caro, it's time to bring back the 5-minute warning. Good call, bad call.
This is a great call. A tribute to my old colleague Jeff McClure call. He fought for this. Let's have a look at the two state leagues. This is a VFL grand final, decided by a goal. Nobody knew the time.
30 minutes already.
Nobody, and here we are in the Sandford grand final.
Back to back.
This game was decided by 5 points, Kane, and nobody knew watching the game, just as they didn't at the ground, when the siren was going to sound. I love the 5-minute warning.
I think it is better. I think you're right. Lordo, Dan Houston's new club will be hoping his decision-making improves. Good call, bad call.
It's a good call. He's frustrated me. I'll admit this, Dan. He has frustrated me the last month. Yeah. Here is Dan's backflips.
You know, I've said in the past that I'm contracted and I absolutely love the footy club. I love being in Adelaide. And
inform the club that my preference is to play in Victoria next year. And
yeah, that wasn't the first and second time. That was about 4 times.
And Craig, you can bring us home. A rough fortnight for the Victorian Liberal leader, John Pisciuto, just got rougher. Good call, bad call?
This is a good call. I like the move of going woo the Darcy call for the Victorian State Liberal Party. Luke Darcy, we read today that there's a prospect of Luke walking away from media, and we wish him well if that's the case. But he's been a target of the Liberal Party in the past, Caro. Of course, he famously had the Frydenberg statue in his front yard. I think he'd be an awesome Liberal leader in Victoria, and I wonder whether they make the move to go and woo him.
I just became a Labor voter.
I think you're 1-0 up on the argument so far.
I think it might be 3-0.
Closing Cook's up next on Footy Classified.
Hate to do it again, but Cook for Hutchie. Perth Wildcats. Perth Wildcats' first game on Friday night. The new owner is there just looking to enjoy the last game. Here he is. That's a new owner in that blazer there. And look who's coming in with his red jacket at the back there. He's just trying to enjoy the game with his family. Look at Hutchie. That's Hutchie trying to work his way in when he's trying to get the game. So Hutchie's saying, when do I approach him? When don't I? All right, now I'm going to strike. So there is Hutchie looking to big note himself, pats him on the back, and all the guy wants to do is enjoy the game. Watch him fresh air, Hutchie, when he just a 3-pointer goes in, and watch. Enjoy it. You donuts.
Yeah, he did. That's fair. Good spot. Well done. Hey, don't forget Wednesday Footy Classified, which is tomorrow, of course. Thursday, the My Room, Grand Final, Sunday Footy Show, and Footy Furnace. What a great team at Footy Classified, the production team. Congratulations to everyone on the air. Have a great Grand Final. Good night.